Welcome to Mystery Hour. I'm your host, Alex. Settle in with a cup of tea, perhaps, or whatever comforts you on this fine evening. Tonight, we embark on a journey into the shadowy world of 1920s London, where the glamour of the stage hides deadly secrets. Our tale is titled Blood at the Orchid Theatre, a Hercule Poirot mystery. This is a long, immersive story, perfect for unwinding, over 90 minutes if you listen at a leisurely pace. I'll narrate it slowly, deliberately, letting each detail unfold like the petals of an orchid in the moonlight. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more classic mysteries. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? Is it a cozy armchair in London, or perhaps a rainy night in New York? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Stage. In the autumn of 1925, London shimmered with the restless energy of the jazz age. The West End, that glittering artery of theatre and spectacle, pulsed with life. Flappers in beaded dresses, gentlemen in tailored suits, and the ever-present hum of anticipation before a curtain rose. At the heart of Shaftesbury Avenue stood the Orchid Theatre, its facade a confection of Art Deco elegance. Golden lettering spelling out its name, flanked by sculpted orchids that seemed to bloom under the glow of electric marquee lights. Inside, velvet drapes in deep crimson framed a stage where dreams were spun nightly, and tonight, those dreams would shatter into a nightmare. Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mustache as precise as a geometric theorem, was not one for idle evenings at the theatre. He preferred the quiet symmetry of his apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, where order reigned supreme. This evening, he sat in his favorite armchair, a crystal glass of tisane steaming gently in his hand, its herbal aroma mingling with the faint scent of wax polish. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows that danced across his collection of Art Nouveau vases, each positioned with meticulous care. Poirot's little grey cells, as he fondly called his formidable intellect, were at rest. Or so he thought. A sharp knock at the door disrupted his reverie. George, his impeccable valet, entered with the silent grace of a man who knew his master's every preference. In his hand was a silver tray bearing a single telegram, its edges crisp as if pressed by Poirot's own standards. "Monsieur, a message from Captain Hastings," George announced, his tone as even as the ticking of the mantel clock. Poirot's eyebrows arched, a spark of curiosity igniting in his green eyes. Arthur Hastings, his old friend and occasional companion in detection, had settled into married life with his wife Dulcie, rarely troubling Poirot unless the matter was grave. He took the telegram, unfolding it with the care one might afford a rare manuscript. The words were characteristically blunt. Poirot, old chap, urgent, murder at Orchid Theatre. Isabella, Voss, actress, stabbed in locked dressing room. Police stumped. Meet me there tonight, 9 p.m. sharp. Hastings. A locked room. Poirot's moustache twitched, a telltale sign of his mind stirring to life. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, setting the tisane aside. A crime impossible, yet committed. This is a challenge for the little grey cells. George, my overcoat and hat. S'il vous plaît. We depart for the theatre at once. The journey to Shaftesbury Avenue was a blur of London's nocturnal pulse, taxicabs honking, street vendors hawking late editions of the Evening Standard, and the distant strains of a jazz band spilling from a basement club. Poirot, ever observant, noted the city's contrasts, the glamour of wealth against the grit of fog-soaked alleys. His mind, however, was already at the Orchid Theatre, piecing together the puzzle before he'd even seen the board. The theatre loomed ahead, its marquee dimmed in respect for the tragedy within. A crowd of curious onlookers pressed against police barriers, their murmurs a low hum beneath the drizzle. Poirot stepped from the cab, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the damp. Captain Hastings waited by the entrance, his boyish face creased with anxiety beneath his trilby hat. "Poirot!" Hastings exclaimed, striding forward. "Thank heavens you're here. It's a ghastly business. Isabella Voss, the star of the Scarlet Orchid, found dead not an hour ago. Stabbed through the heart in her dressing room, door bolted from the inside, no weapon to be found. The performance had just ended. She was radiant on stage. And then, screams." Poirot raised a hand, calming his friend's agitation. "Mon ami, you leap like a hare when the fox is near. Tell me slowly of the crime and those involved. Who are the players in this drama?" Hastings nodded, leading Poirot through the theatre's grand foyer. The space was a cathedral of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, and gilded mirrors reflected the anxious faces of loitering stagehands. Yet the air was heavy, tainted by the scent of fear and tragedy. Hastings lowered his voice, as if the walls themselves might eavesdrop. "Isabella Voss was the darling of the West End," he began. 35, with raven hair and eyes like emeralds. Her performance in The Scarlet Orchid was the talk of London, a melodrama of love and betrayal, packing the house nightly. She was found in her dressing room after the curtain fell, just as the cast gathered for their usual champagne toast. "And the suspects?" Poirot pressed, his gaze sweeping the foyer, noting a discarded playbill fluttering in a draught. 5, by my count," Hastings said. "First, Reginald Voss, her husband. He's a banker, but a jealous one. Word is, they fought over her admirers. Actresses draw them like moths, you know. He's been sinking money into the theatre, but his investments are failing. Then there's Lydia Hart, the understudy. Young, blonde, fiercely ambitious. She's been stuck in Isabella's shadow. But with her gone, Lydia takes the lead role. A clear motive, if you ask me. Next, Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the theatre owner. A pompous sort, drowning in debt. Isabella was his golden goose, but they clashed. She demanded higher pay, and he couldn't afford it. Victor Lang, the director and playwright, is another. Passionate, temperamental, and well. There's gossip he and Isabella were entangled romantically, but it ended badly. A lover scorned, perhaps. Finally, Elias Thorne, the stage manager. Quiet, almost invisible, but sharp-eyed. He handles props, including the stage daggers. Rumor has it, Isabella caught him skimming from the petty cash. Poirot stroked his moustache, his mind cataloguing each name like entries in a ledger. 5 suspects, each with a motive: jealousy, ambition, debt, passion, theft. And the locked room? Tell me of its particulars. They reached the dressing room corridor, a narrow passage lined with posters of past productions. The door to Isabella's room was heavy oak, its brass lock gleaming under a single bulb. Hastings gestured. Bolted from the inside, Poirot. The police had to break it down. There's a small window, high up, barred and untouched. No secret passages. The architect's plans confirm it. Japp's at his wit's end. Inspector Japp, a sturdy figure in a rumpled suit, emerged from the room, his face a map of frustration. Poirot, Hastings dragged you into this mess? Well, your fancy methods might help. No fingerprints, no forced entry. The stab wound was clean, straight to the heart, but the weapons vanished. Suicide, maybe. But why no knife? "Non, Inspector," Poirot said, his voice firm as polished steel. Suicide does not fit the character of a star like Mademoiselle Voss. This is murder, and Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth. Inside the dressing room, the scene was a frozen tableau of tragedy. Isabella lay slumped at her vanity, her emerald evening gown stained with blood that matched the theater's crimson curtains. Her face, even in death, held a haunting beauty, her lips parted as if in mid-sentence. A spilled perfume bottle glinted on the floor, its scent cloying in the still air. A half-written letter lay beside her, its ink smudged, and a single orchid petal, pale pink, out of place, rested near her hand. Poirot's eyes darted like a hawk's, taking in every detail, the mirror reflecting the chaos, the costume rack undisturbed, the bolt's sturdy mechanism. He knelt, examining the petal with a magnifying glass. "Curieux," he murmured. "An orchid in a theater named for one. A clue or a coincidence?" Hastings fidgeted. "What now, Poirot?" "Now, mon ami, we observe, we question, we think. The stage is set, and the players are in place. But the script of this crime is written in shadows, and it is for Poirot to bring it into the light." The fog thickened outside. Poirot began his methodical survey, the little grey cells humming with the promise of a solution. The Orchid Theatre held its secrets tightly, but no secret could withstand the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Performance. The Orchid Theatre, on that fateful autumn evening in 1925, was a cauldron of ambition, passion, and hidden resentments, all simmering beneath the surface of a dazzling performance. To understand the murder of Isabella Voss, we must rewind to the hours before the tragedy, when the theatre hummed with the vibrant chaos of a sold-out show. The play, The Scarlet Orchid, was a melodrama of love and betrayal, its every line crafted to wring tears and gasps from its audience. And at its heart was Isabella, the star whose radiance outshone the footlights. The evening began with the familiar bustle of London's West End. Outside, Shaftesbury Avenue glowed under gaslights, the fog weaving through crowds of theatre-goers in their finery. Men in black tie, women with feathers pinned to their hair, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. The Orchid Theatre's marquee blazed with the promise of spectacle, its golden letters proclaiming tonight's performance to a city hungry for glamour. Inside, the auditorium was a sea of velvet seats, each filled with patrons whispering about Isabella Voss, the actress whose name was synonymous with brilliance. Backstage, however, the atmosphere was less harmonious. The narrow corridors, lined with faded posters and flickering gas lamps, buzzed with the frenetic energy of a production in full swing. Stagehands darted about, adjusting ropes and props, while the cast prepared in their cramped dressing rooms. The air carried the scent of grease paint, roses from admirers' bouquets, and the faint tang of nervous sweat. Lydia Hart, the understudy, stood in the wings, her blonde curls pinned tightly beneath her cap to keep them from catching on the scenery. At 24, she was a rising talent, but forever eclipsed by Isabella's star. Her blue eyes burned with a mixture of envy and determination as she watched the stagehands. "One day, it'll be me out there," she muttered to Elias Thorne, the stage manager, who was inspecting a prop dagger with a jeweler's precision. Elias, a wiry man in his 40s, with a face like weathered parchment, barely glanced up. "Keep dreaming, love," he said, his voice low and distracted. His fingers, calloused from years of handling ropes and pulleys, slipped a few coins from the petty cash box into his pocket when he thought no one was looking. The box, tucked behind a crate of costumes, was a poorly kept secret among the crew, and Isabella had recently begun asking pointed questions about missing funds. In the director's office, a cluttered room overlooking the stage, Victor Lang was locked in a heated exchange with Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the theatre's owner. Victor, a lean man with intense dark eyes and a cigarette dangling from his lips, gestured wildly. Isabella's at it again, demanding script changes mid-run. She's ruining my vision for the Scarlet Orchid. Sir Geoffrey, a portly figure with a florid complexion and a brandy-soaked voice, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. We need her, Victor. Without Isabella, the creditors will have my head. Those loans from Reginald Voss are due next month, and he's not a patient man. Reginald Voss himself sat in the audience, second row center, his face a mask of brooding discontent. A banker by trade, his wealth had once been the talk of London's financial circles, but risky investments, many tied to the Orchid Theatre, had left him teetering on ruin. His marriage to Isabella, once a fairy tale, had soured under the weight of her fame and his jealousy. Tonight, he watched her perform a tender scene with the leading man, his jaw tightening at their staged embrace. The curtain rose at precisely 7:30 p.m., heralded by the orchestra's swelling overture. Isabella took the stage, her presence electric. Her raven hair gleamed under the spotlight, and her green eyes seemed to pierce the darkness of the auditorium. Her voice, rich and emotive, carried the weight of the play's tragic heroine, a woman betrayed by love. The audience was spellbound, their applause at the end of the first act like thunder rolling through the theater. During intermission, the mood shifted. Isabella stormed to her dressing room, her heels clicking sharply on the wooden floor. That idiot Lang, she snapped to no one in particular, slamming the door and throwing the bolt, as was her custom to ensure privacy. Changing my lines mid-show. Does he think I'm some amateur? She sat at her vanity, brushing her hair with furious strokes, the mirror reflecting her flushed cheeks. A bouquet of orchids, a gift from Victor, sat on the table, one petal already wilting. Backstage, the other players continued their own dramas. Lydia lingered near the green room, sipping tea and exchanging barbed pleasantries with the chorus girls, who whispered about her ambition. Elias moved silently through the prop room, his hands lingering on the stage daggers. Blunt, theatrical blades designed to look deadly but harmless. Sir Geoffrey, in his office, poured another brandy, his eyes darting to a ledger that showed the theatre's precarious finances. Victor paced the wings, muttering about artistic integrity, while Reginald slipped backstage to confront his wife, but found her door locked. Their argument, overheard by a stagehand, was brief but heated. "You're making a fool of me, Isabella," he hissed through the door before storming off. The second act began, and Isabella returned to the stage, her professionalism masking any turmoil. The play's climax, a betrayal revealed in a moonlit garden, was flawless, her final monologue drawing tears from the audience. As the curtain fell, the theatre erupted in applause and the cast took their bows. Isabella, radiant, blew a kiss to the crowd before retreating to her dressing room once more, locking the door behind her. The discovery came swiftly after. Lydia, tasked with fetching Isabella for the cast's post-show champagne toast, knocked on the dressing room door. "Miss Voss, we're waiting." Silence. She knocked again, harder, her unease growing. Sir Geoffrey, alerted by her calls, joined her with the spare key, but the internal bolt thwarted them. "Blast it," he muttered, summoning a stagehand to force the door. The oak gave way with a groan, revealing a scene of horror. Isabella lay slumped at her vanity, her emerald gown stained with a spreading bloom of blood. A single stab wound pierced her heart, precise and fatal. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared into the mirror, and her hand rested near a spilled perfume bottle, its contents pooling on the floor. A single orchid petal lay beside her, its pale pink stalk against the dark wood. The theater descended into chaos. Screams echoed through the corridors, drawing the cast and crew. Lydia gasped, clutching her throat, while Sir Geoffrey turned pale, muttering about ruin. Victor stared, his cigarette falling to the floor, and Elias slipped quietly to the back, his face unreadable. Reginald, summoned from the foyer, collapsed at the sight, his cries raw with grief or guilt. By the time Hercule Poirot arrived, summoned by Hastings' urgent telegram, the police had cordoned off the scene. Inspector Japp, his face grim, briefed Poirot as they stood outside the dressing room. No weapon, Poirot. Door bolted from inside, window barred and too high to reach. No fingerprints, no signs of a struggle beyond the spilled perfume. It's impossible. Poirot's eyes gleamed with the challenge. Impossible, Inspector. No. There is always a method hidden in the details. Let us begin. He stepped into the room, his gaze sweeping over the blood, the petal, the letter half written in Isabella's elegant hand. A stagehand, questioned by Hastings, reported hearing nothing unusual, just the creak of the theater's old beams and the distant applause. Yet Poirot's attention lingered on a faint smudge near the door. A partial footprint in blood, suspiciously like Reginald's polished brogues. A red herring, perhaps. The footprint was too perfect, almost staged. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass catching the light. Curio, he said softly. The theater is a place of illusion, and this crime is no exception. As the night deepened, Poirot retreated to a quiet corner of the foyer, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The Orchid Theatre, with its glittering facade, hid a labyrinth of motives: jealousy, ambition, debt, and betrayal. The stage was set, and the little grey cells were already at work, peeling back the layers of this impossible crime. Chapter 3. The gathering storm dawn broke over London, casting a pale grey light through the fog that clung to Shaftesbury Avenue like a mourner's veil. The Orchid Theatre, so vibrant the night before, now stood silent, its marquee dimmed in deference to the tragedy within. The air was heavy with the scent of damp cobblestones and the lingering perfume of last night's audience. But for Hercule Poirot, the morning brought only the promise of clarity. His little grey cells, as he liked to call them, were already at work, piecing together the fragments of the impossible murder of Isabella Voss. Poirot arrived at the theatre promptly at 8, his patent leather shoes clicking sharply on the pavement. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful companion, waited by the entrance, his face etched with the restless energy of a man who hadn't slept. "Poirot, you're here," Hastings said, relief softening his features. Japp's inside, tearing his hair out. "The press is circling like vultures. 'Murder at the Orchid,'" screamed the headlines this morning. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of mild amusement. "The press, mon ami. They thrive on chaos. But we seek order. Let us proceed to the heart of this affair, the suspects and their secrets." The foyer of the Orchid Theatre was quieter now, the chandeliers dimmed, their prismatic light muted. A lone constable stood guard at the dressing-room corridor, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the unknown. Inspector Japp emerged from the manager's office, his rumpled suit betraying a night spent wrestling with the case. "Poirot," he grumbled, "I hope your foreign brain can make sense of this. No weapon, no way in or out, and 5 people with reasons to want Isabella dead. It's a ruddy nightmare. Patience, Inspector, Poirot replied, his voice smooth as polished oak. The crime appears impossible only because we have not yet seen the method. Let us begin with the interviews. The truth lies in the words and the silences of those who knew Mademoiselle Voss. Chap led them to the manager's office, a cramped space cluttered with playbills, ledgers, and a half-empty bottle of brandy. The suspects had been summoned, each waiting in a separate corner of the theatre to avoid collusion. Poirot settled behind the desk, his small frame commanding the room like a maestro before an orchestra. Hastings stood by the door, notebook in hand, ready to capture every detail. First was Reginald Voss, Isabella's husband. He entered with the air of a man carrying a private storm, his tailored suit slightly creased, his cufflinks glinting like accusations. At 40, he was handsome in a stern way, with sharp cheekbones and eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. Monsieur Voss, Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing. You loved your wife, yet there were tensions, n'est-ce pas? Reginald's jaw tightened. I loved Isabella, yes, but she was difficult. Her fame brought admirers, too many. We argued. I won't deny it. Last night, before the show, I went to her dressing room to discuss a business matter. She was dismissive, as always. He hesitated, then added, That footprint Jap found? It's mine. But I swear I left her alive. I was in the audience when she died. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the flicker of unease in Reginald's gaze. A footprint in blood, monsieur, is most inconvenient. And your investments in the theatre, how do they fare? Reginald shifted uncomfortably. Not well. I've sunk thousands into this place at Isabella's urging. Her death, it ruins me financially. If anything, I needed her alive. Poirot made a note, his pen moving with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Merci, Monsieur Voss. We shall speak again. Next came Lydia Hart, the understudy, her blonde curls loose now, framing a face that was both delicate and defiant. At 24, she carried the hunger of youth, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears, or perhaps calculation. Miss Hart, Poirot said, leaning forward, you stood in Mademoiselle Voss's shadow. Her death places you in the spotlight, non? Lydia's hands twisted in her lap. I envied her talent, yes, but I didn't kill her. I was in the green room during intermission, sipping tea with the chorus girls. Elias Thorne can vouch for me. He was there too. Her voice wavered, but her gaze held steady, almost too steady. Poirot tilted his head, studying her. And your ambition, mademoiselle? Did it not chafe to wait for your moment? She flushed. Of course it did. But I'd rather earn my place than steal it with blood. The third to face Poirot was Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the theatre owner, whose florid complexion and trembling hands betrayed his reliance on brandy. His suit, though expensive, hung loosely, as if he'd lost weight under the strain of debt. Sir Geoffrey, Poirot began, Mademoiselle Voss was your star, yet you quarrelled over her demands for higher pay. How dire is your financial state? Sir Geoffrey mopped his brow with a handkerchief. Dire, but everyone's in debt these days. Isabella was difficult, always wanting more money, more control. But we'd reconciled, I swear. Her death is a catastrophe. The theatre will collapse without her. Poirot's gaze lingered on the ledger on the desk, its pages dog-eared and stained. And the loans from Monsieur Voss? They weigh heavily, no? Sir Geoffrey's eyes darted away. Reginald's been patient, but yes, it's a burden. Victor Lang, the director and playwright, entered next, his lean frame vibrating with nervous energy. His dark eyes, shadowed by sleeplessness, burned with a passion that bordered on obsession. He lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like a question mark. Monsieur Lang, Poirot said, there are whispers of an affair with Mademoiselle Voss, now ended. A lover scorned is a dangerous creature, is it not? Victor exhaled sharply. An affair. Months ago, perhaps, but it was nothing serious. She rejected me recently. Humiliating, yes, but I'd not kill her for it. My play, The Scarlet Orchid, was her triumph as much as mine. Her death destroys my work. Poirot noted the tremor in Victor's hand. And the bouquet of orchids in her dressing room? From you, I presume? Victor nodded. A gesture of goodwill. She loved orchids. Last was Elias Thorne, the stage manager. A man so unassuming he seemed to blend into the theater's woodwork. His grey eyes were watchful, his hands steady, despite the faint tremor Poirot detected. Monsieur Thorne, Poirot said, you handled the props, including the stage daggers, and there are rumors of discrepancies in the petty cash discovered by Mademoiselle Voss. Elias's face remained impassive. I managed the props, yes. The daggers are fake, blunt, for show. As for the cash, Isabella was mistaken. I've done nothing wrong. His voice was calm, but his fingers tightened around a pencil, betraying a flicker of nerves. Poirot dismissed Elias, then turned to Hastings and Japp. Each has a motive: jealousy, ambition, debt, passion, theft. But the method? That is the key to this locked room. Returning to the dressing room, Poirot examined the scene anew. The heavy oak door, bolted from within, showed no signs of tampering. The barred window, high above, was intact, its iron unyielding. Yet a clue emerged. The orchid petal, pale pink, matched Victor's bouquet, but one flower was missing, its stem broken. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass catching the light. Curieux, he murmured. A petal falls, but where is its bloom? A stagehand, a nervous lad named Tommy, provided a new detail. I saw a shadow by the dressing room window during intermission, he said, twisting his cap. Thought it was a trick of the light, but it moved, like someone climbing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A shadow, you say? Yet the window is too high, and no ladder was found. Most interesting. Japp snorted. A red herring, Poirot. That window's unreachable without scaffolding. Perhaps, Poirot said, but every detail matters. The footprint, the petal, the shadow, they form a pattern, if only we can see it. As the morning wore on, Poirot requested a reconstruction of the performance's timeline. The murder, he calculated, occurred in the brief window between the second act's end and the discovery. 5 minutes, perhaps less. The suspects' alibis were shaky, each overlapping in ways that invited suspicion. Lydia's claim of being in the green room relied on Elias, whose own movements were vague. Reginald's presence in the audience was confirmed, but he'd visited Isabella earlier. Sir Geoffrey and Victor claimed to be in their offices, yet no one could fully corroborate their stories. A complication arose. Traces of poison were found in the spilled perfume bottle, a subtle toxin that could have caused dizziness but not death. The stab wound, however, was the fatal blow, precise and deliberate. 2 methods? Hastings wondered aloud. Or a mistake? Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami, the poison is a distraction, perhaps unintentional. The killer is clever, but not infallible. As the suspects dispersed, their glances heavy with unspoken accusations, Poirot stood alone in the dressing room. his mind a whirl of possibilities. The Orchid Theatre was a stage not only for plays, but for human frailties, greed, love, betrayal. The investigation was only beginning, but the little grey cells were already weaving a tapestry of logic, ready to unravel the truth hidden in the shadows of the locked room. Chapter 3. The Gathering Storm. Dawn broke over London, casting a pale grey light through the fog that clung to Shaftesbury Avenue like a mourner's veil. The Orchid Theatre, so vibrant the night before, now stood silent, its marquee dimmed in deference to the tragedy within. The air was heavy with the scent of damp cobblestones and the lingering perfume of last night's audience. But for Hercule Poirot, the morning brought only the promise of clarity. His little grey cells, as he liked to call them, were already at work, piecing together the fragments of the impossible murder of Isabella Voss. Poirot arrived at the theatre promptly at 8, his patent leather shoes clicking sharply on the pavement. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful companion, waited by the entrance, his face etched with the restless energy of a man who hadn't slept. "Poirot, you're here," Hastings said, relief softening his features. Japson sighed, tearing his hair out. The press is circling like vultures. "Murder at the Orchid," screamed the headlines this morning. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of mild amusement. "The press, mon ami, they thrive on chaos. But we seek order. Let us proceed to the heart of this affair, the suspects, and their secrets." The foyer of the Orchid Theatre was quieter now, the chandeliers dimmed, their prismatic light muted. A lone constable stood guard at the dressing-room corridor, his notebook clutched like a talisman against the unknown. Inspector Japp emerged from the manager's office, his rumpled suit betraying a night spent wrestling with the case. "Poirot," he grumbled, "I hope your foreign brain can make sense of this. No weapon, no way in or out, and 5 people with reasons to want Isabella dead. It's a ruddy nightmare." "Patience, Inspector," Poirot replied, his voice smooth as polished oak. "The crime appears impossible only because we have not yet seen the method. Let us begin with the interviews. The truth lies in the words and the silences of those who knew Mademoiselle Voss." Japp led them to the manager's office, a cramped space cluttered with playbills, ledgers, and a half-empty bottle of brandy. The suspects had been summoned, each waiting in a separate corner of the theatre to avoid collusion. Poirot settled behind the desk, his small frame commanding the room like a maestro before an orchestra. Hastings stood by the door, notebook in hand, ready to capture every detail. First was Reginald Voss, Isabella's husband. He entered with the air of a man carrying a private storm, his tailored suit slightly creased, his cufflinks glinting like accusations. At 40, he was handsome in a stern way, with sharp cheekbones and eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. "Monsieur Voss," Poirot began, his tone courteous but probing, "you loved your wife. Yet there were tensions, n'est-ce pas?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "I loved Isabella, yes, but she was difficult. Her fame brought admirers. Too many. We argued. I won't deny it. Last night, before the show, I went to her dressing room to discuss a business matter. She was dismissive, as always." He hesitated, then added, "That footprint Japp found? It's mine, but I swear I left her alive. I was in the audience when she died." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the flicker of unease in Reginald's gaze. "A footprint in blood, monsieur, is most inconvenient. And your investments in the theatre, how did they fare?" Reginald shifted uncomfortably. "Not well. I've sunk thousands into this place, at Isabella's urging. Her death. It ruins me financially. If anything, I needed her alive. Poirot made a note, his pen moving with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Merci, Monsieur Voss. We shall speak again. Next came Lydia Hart, the understudy, her blonde curls loose now, framing a face that was both delicate and defiant. At 24, she carried the hunger of youth, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears, or perhaps calculation. Miss Hart, Poirot said, leaning forward. You stood in Mademoiselle Voss's shadow. Her death places you in the spotlight, no? Lydia's hands twisted in her lap. I envied her talent, yes, but I didn't kill her. I was in the green room during intermission, sipping tea with the chorus girls. Elias Thorne can vouch for me. He was there too. Her voice wavered, but her gaze held steady, almost too steady. Poirot tilted his head, studying her. And your ambition, mademoiselle? Did it not chafe to wait for your moment? She flushed. Of course it did. But I'd rather earn my place than steal it with blood. The third to face Poirot was Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the theatre owner, whose florid complexion and trembling hands betrayed his reliance on brandy. His suit, though expensive, hung loosely, as if he'd lost weight under the strain of debt. Sir Geoffrey, Poirot began, Mademoiselle Voss was your star, yet you quarrelled over her demands for higher pay. How dire is your financial state? Sir Geoffrey mopped his brow with a handkerchief. Dire? Bah, everyone's in debt these days. Isabella was difficult, always wanting more. More money, more control. But we'd reconciled, I swear. Her death is a catastrophe. The theatre will collapse without her. Poirot's gaze lingered on the ledger on the desk, its pages dog-eared and stained. And the loans from Monsieur Voss? They weigh heavily, no? Sir Geoffrey's eyes darted away. Reginald's been patient, but yes, it's a burden. Victor Lang, the director and playwright, entered next, his lean frame vibrating with nervous energy. His dark eyes, shadowed by sleeplessness, burned with a passion that bordered on obsession. He lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like a question mark. Monsieur Long, Poirot said, there are whispers of an affair with Mademoiselle Voss, now ended. A lover scorned is a dangerous creature, is it not? Victor exhaled sharply. An affair? Months ago, perhaps. But it was nothing serious. She rejected me recently. Humiliating, yes. But I'd not kill her for it. My play, The Scarlet Orchid, was her triumph as much as mine. Her death destroys my work. Poirot noted the tremor in Victor's hand. And the bouquet of orchids in her dressing room? From you, I presume? Victor nodded, a gesture of goodwill. She loved orchids. Last was Elias Thorne, the stage manager, a man so unassuming he seemed to blend into the theatre's woodwork. His grey eyes were watchful, his hands steady, despite the faint tremor Poirot detected. Monsieur Thorne, Poirot said, you handled the props, including the stage daggers, and there are rumors of discrepancies in the petty cash discovered by Mademoiselle Voss. Elias's face remained impassive. I managed the props, yes. The daggers are fake, blunt, for show. As for the cash, Isabella was mistaken. I've done nothing wrong. His voice was calm, but his fingers tightened around a pencil, betraying a flicker of nerves. Poirot dismissed Elias, then turned to Hastings and Japp. Each has a motive: jealousy, ambition, debt, passion, theft. But the method? That is the key to this locked room. Returning to the dressing room, Poirot examined the scene anew. The heavy oak door, bolted from within, showed no signs of tampering. The barred window, high above, was intact, its iron unyielding. Yet a clue emerged. The orchid petal, pale pink, matched Victor's bouquet. But one flower was missing, its stem broken. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass catching the light. Curieux, he murmured. A petal falls, but where is its bloom? A stagehand, a nervous lad named Tommy, provided a new detail. I saw a shadow by the dressing room window during intermission, he said, twisting his cap. Thought it was a trick of the light, but it moved, like someone climbing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A shadow, you say? Yet the window is too high, and no ladder was found. Most interesting. Jap snorted. A red herring, Poirot. That window's unreachable without scaffolding. Perhaps, Poirot said, but every detail matters. The footprint, the petal, the shadow. They form a pattern. If only we can see it. As the morning wore on, Poirot requested a reconstruction of the performance's timeline. The murder, he calculated, occurred in the brief window between the second act's end and the discovery. 5 minutes, perhaps less. The suspects' alibis were shaky, each overlapping in ways that invited suspicion. Lydia's claim of being in the green room relied on Elias, whose own movements were vague. Reginald's presence in the audience was confirmed, but he'd visited Isabella earlier. Sir Geoffrey and Victor claimed to be in their offices, yet no one could fully corroborate their stories. A complication arose. Traces of poison were found in the spilled perfume bottle, a subtle toxin that could have caused dizziness but not death. The stab wound, however, was the fatal blow, precise and deliberate. 2 methods? Hastings wondered aloud. Or a mistake? Poirot shook his head. Non, mon ami. The poison is a distraction, perhaps unintentional. The killer is clever, but not infallible. As the suspects dispersed, their glances heavy with unspoken accusations, Poirot stood alone in the dressing room, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The Orchid Theatre was a stage not only for plays, but for human frailties, greed, love, betrayal. The investigation was only beginning, but the little grey cells were already weaving a tapestry of logic, ready to unravel the truth hidden in the shadows of the locked room. Chapter 4. Shadows and Secrets. The Orchid Theatre, bathed in the muted light of a late October morning in 1925, seemed to hold its breath. The grandeur of its Art Deco facade was overshadowed by the grim reality within. Isabella Voss, the star of the Scarlet Orchid, lay dead in her locked dressing room, a victim of an impossible crime. Hercule Poirot, his grey suit as immaculate as his logic, stood at the heart of the mystery, his little grey cells weaving through the tangled threads of motive and method. The investigation, now in its second day, was about to delve deeper into the labyrinth of clues, red herrings, and hidden truths. Poirot, accompanied by Captain Arthur Hastings, returned to the dressing room, where the air still carried the faint sweetness of spilled perfume and the metallic tang of blood. Inspector Japp, his face etched with frustration, hovered nearby, his notebook filled with contradictions. Poirot, Japp said, rubbing his temples. We've got 5 suspects, all with motives, but this locked room business, it's like a stage trick gone wrong. No weapon, no way in or out. I'm half tempted to call it a ghost. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. A ghost, Inspector? No. The solution is human, and it lies in the details. The petal, the footprint, the shadow. Let us examine the scene once more, for the theatre is a place of illusion, and illusions can be unmasked. The dressing room was a frozen tableau of tragedy. Isabella's body had been removed, but the bloodstain on the floor remained, a dark bloom against the polished wood. The vanity held its secrets: a smudged letter, a toppled perfume bottle, and that curious orchid petal, pale pink, like a whisper of the theatre's namesake. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass catching the light as he studied the bolt on the heavy oak door. It was sturdy, unforced, locked from within. The high window, barred and intact, offered no entry. Yet the petal intrigued him. "This flower," he murmured. "It is from Monsieur Lang's bouquet. But one is missing. Why?" Hastings, ever eager, pointed to the floor. "What about that footprint, Poirot? It's Reginald's size. Damning evidence, if you ask me." Poirot shook his head. "Too damning, mon ami. The footprint is too perfect, placed like a prop in a play. A red herring, perhaps, to point us toward the husband." Their examination was interrupted by a discovery. A torn letter fragment tucked beneath the vanity, overlooked in the initial sweep. It read, "You will pay for," in Isabella's elegant script, the rest missing. Hastings seized on it. Blackmail, Poirot? Could Sir Geoffrey's debts be the key? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Possible, but too convenient. This fragment feels staged, like a line from the play itself. We must look beyond the obvious. To test the timeline, Poirot requested a reconstruction of the fatal evening. The stage manager, Elias Thorne, was summoned to guide them through the performance's final moments. Elias, his grey eyes guarded, explained the schedule. The second act ended at 9:45 p.m. Isabella took her bows, then went to her dressing room. 5 minutes later, Lydia knocked for the toast, and we found her. 5 minutes, a narrow window for murder. Poirot paced the stage where the set of the Scarlet Orchid still stood, its painted garden backdrop eerily serene. 5 minutes, he mused. Enough for a clever killer, but only one with intimate knowledge of the theatre's rhythm. The suspects were gathered for further questioning, their tensions palpable in the auditorium's dim light. Poirot began with Lydia Hart, whose ambition seemed to pulse beneath her composed exterior. "Mademoiselle Hart," he said, "you claim to have been in the green room, yet your alibi rests on Monsieur Thorne, who is himself elusive. Tell me, did you ever enter the dressing room corridor during intermission?" Lydia's cheeks flushed. "No, I told you. I was with the chorus girls. But I did pass the corridor earlier to fetch a script. My glove went missing that day. Someone must have taken it." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A glove, you say? Most curious." A new clue surfaced. A single glove, monogrammed with Lydia's initials, found near the dressing room door. A red herring, or evidence. Lydia insisted it was stolen, but her story wavered under scrutiny. Next, Poirot turned to Victor Lang, whose cigarette smoke curled like a confession. "Monsieur Lang, your affair with Mademoiselle Voss ended badly, yet you sent her orchids. A gesture of peace, or something else?" Victor's hand shook as he lit another cigarette. "I told you, it was goodwill. Isabella was difficult, but she was my muse. Her death ruins me. My play's a flop without her." Poirot noted a detail. The bouquet in Isabella's room had one orchid missing, its stem snapped cleanly. "And this missing flower, monsieur? Did it fall in the heat of passion?" Victor paled. "I don't know. I gave her the bouquet before the show." Sir Geoffrey Beaumont was next, his bluster barely masking his panic. "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, "your debts are no secret, and Mademoiselle Voss's demands strained you further. Did you see her after the performance?" Sir Geoffrey mopped his brow. "No, I was in my office going over accounts. I heard nothing until Lydia's screams." Yet a stagehand, Tommy, contradicted him, claiming to have seen Sir Geoffrey near the dressing room corridor just before the discovery. Another red herring, or a crack in his alibi? Reginald Voss, questioned again, grew defensive. I told you, I was in the audience. Yes, I argued with Isabella before the show. She was flaunting her admirers. But I didn't kill her. That footprint, someone's framing me. Poirot's attention shifted to Elias Thorne, whose quiet demeanor seemed a mask for deeper currents. Monsieur Thorne, you control the props, the stage, the very pulse of this theatre. Did you handle the dagger used in the play? Elias nodded, his voice steady. Yes, but it's blunt, a prop, the real weapon. I've no idea where it came from. A twist emerged. Poirot discovered a hidden seam in the dressing room wall, barely visible behind a costume rack. It suggested a panel, but it led only to an adjacent storage room, locked and empty during the performance. A secret passage? Hastings whispered excitedly. Non, Poirot said. A distraction, perhaps. The killer wishes us to chase phantoms. The investigation deepened with a startling find. Traces of poison in the perfume bottle were confirmed as belladonna, a subtle toxin that could cause disorientation but not death. The stab wound, however, was the fatal blow, delivered with surgical precision. Two methods, Japp wondered aloud, or a mistake. Poirot shook his head. The poison is a shadow, meant to confuse. The stab is the truth. As the day wore on, Poirot orchestrated a test. He asked Elias to demonstrate the prop dagger's use in the play. The blade, blunt and theatrical, gleamed under the stage lights, but Poirot noticed a faint scratch on its handle, a mark not present on the others. Curio, he said softly. A dagger modified, perhaps. A new witness emerged, a chorus girl, Clara, who claimed to have overheard a heated exchange between Isabella and Elias during rehearsals. She accused him of stealing, Clara whispered, said she'd expose him. Elias, confronted, denied it. She was mistaken. I've taken nothing. Yet Poirot's suspicions grew. The orchid petal, the glove, the footprint, the letter fragment. They formed a mosaic of deception. But the locked room remained the puzzle's heart. How had the killer entered, killed, and left, leaving the bolt thrown? Poirot paced the stage, his mind tracing the theatre's architecture. The high window, the heavy door, the hidden seam, all pointed to a killer with intimate knowledge of the space. As the suspects dispersed, their glances heavy with distrust, Poirot lingered by the stage, where a prop table held the tools of illusion, ropes, mirrors, daggers. He picked up a coil of thin twine, its end frayed. A thread, he murmured, can pull more than scenery. Hastings, catching his tone, leaned in. What's that, Poirot? A clue? Perhaps, mon ami. The theatre is a machine of deception, and this murder is its greatest act. We must look beyond the footlights to see the truth. The day ended with Poirot deep in thought, the clues swirling like players in a drama. The Orchid Theatre held its secrets tightly, but the little grey cells were relentless, ready to peel back the layers of this impossible crime. The stage was set for the next revelation, and the shadows were beginning to speak. Chapter 5. The Web Tightens. The Orchid Theatre, on the third day of Hercule Poirot's investigation in the autumn of 1925, seemed to pulse with secrets, its opulent facade a mask for the treachery within. The murder of Isabella Voss, stabbed in her locked dressing room, had transformed the stage into a chessboard, and Poirot, with his meticulous logic, was moving the pieces. The clues, orchid petal, bloody footprint, torn letter, and traces of poison, formed a tantalizing puzzle. but the locked room remained an enigma. As the fog thickened outside, Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, sensing the truth was close, yet tangled in a web of deception. Poirot stood in the theatre's auditorium, the velvet seats empty, their crimson hue echoing the bloodstain in Isabella's dressing room. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, hovered nearby, his notebook filled with frantic scribbles. Inspector Japp, his patience fraying, joined them, his voice gruff. Poirot, we've got motives aplenty, but this locked room, it's driving me mad. The press is hounding me, and now Reginald Voss is demanding answers. What's your next move? Poirot's eyes gleamed, his moustache twitching with purpose. The next move, Inspector, is to unravel the threads of this crime. The clues are like actors. Some play their roles honestly, others deceive. Let us probe deeper, for the killer grows nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. The morning began with a startling discovery. Poirot, re-examining the theatre's ledgers at Sir Geoffrey Beaumont's desk, uncovered forged entries, subtle alterations in the petty cash records, disguised as prop expenses. The handwriting matched Elias Thorne's, but a second set of initials, GB, implicated Sir Geoffrey. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. A conspiracy of theft, perhaps. And Mademoiselle Voss discovered it. Confronting Sir Geoffrey in his cluttered office, Poirot held up the ledger. Monsieur Beaumont, these forgeries suggest you and Monsieur Thorne were siphoning funds. Did Isabella threaten to expose you? Sir Geoffrey's florid face paled, his brandy glass trembling. I admit Elias handled some creative accounting to keep us afloat. Isabella suspected, yes, but I begged her to stay quiet. I didn't kill her. Without her, the theatre's finished. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. And yet, your alibi for the murder's timing is weak. Where were you, truly, when the curtain fell? Sir Geoffrey stammered. In my office, I swear, checking the books. But a stagehand's earlier testimony placed him near the dressing room corridor, a contradiction Poirot filed away. Next, Poirot turned to Reginald Voss, whose jealousy had painted him as a prime suspect. In the green room, Reginald's eyes were red-rimmed, his voice hoarse. I've told you, Poirot, I was in the audience. Yes, I argued with Isabella before the show. She was flaunting her admirers, humiliating me. But I didn't touch her. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but piercing. And yet, Monsieur Voss, a witness saw you backstage during intermission, not just before the show. Why lie? Reginald's hands clenched. I went back to plead with her, but the door was locked. I left in a huff, asked the doorman. He saw me return to my seat. The doorman, questioned later, confirmed Reginald's return, but admitted the timing was vague. Another crack in an alibi. Poirot noted a new detail. Reginald's cufflink, found near the prop room, bore a faint blood smear. Another red herring? Hastings whispered. Perhaps, Poirot said, but the blood is too convenient, like a prop placed for effect. Lydia Hart's interview brought further complications. The understudy, her blonde curls framing a defiant face, stood accused of losing her glove near the crime scene. I told you, it was stolen, she insisted. Someone's framing me to take Isabella's place. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Mademoiselle Hart, you claim to have been in the green room, yet no chorus girl fully confirms your presence during those critical 5 minutes. And your glove. How did it find its way to the corridor? Lydia faltered, then admitted. I dropped it earlier that day, near the prop room. I thought I'd misplaced it. Not that it was stolen. A twist emerged. Poirot discovered the glove had been moved deliberately, its monogram smudged, as if handled roughly. A clumsy attempt to implicate you, Poirot mused, or a clever distraction. Victor Lang, the volatile director, was next. His chain smoking filled the rehearsal room with a haze, his dark eyes darting nervously. Monsieur Lang, Poirot said, your orchids adorned Mademoiselle Voss's dressing room, yet one flower is missing. And your affair, how bitter was its end? Victor stubbed out his cigarette. Bitter enough, but I didn't kill her. That orchid, I gave her a full bouquet. If one's missing, someone else tampered with it. Poirot pressed further, revealing a new clue. A stagehand had seen Victor lingering near the dressing room before the show, carrying a small vial. Perfume, perhaps? Poirot asked. Or something more sinister, like the belladonna in her bottle. Victor's face flushed. Perfume, I swear. A gift to mend things. I left it with the bouquet. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Poirot re-examined the hidden seam in the dressing room wall. With Elias's help, he opened the panel, revealing a narrow passage to an adjacent storage room used for costumes. The room was locked during the performance, its key held by Elias. Monsieur Thorne, Poirot said, this passage, known only to theatre staff, could allow entry to the dressing room. Did you use it? Elias's grey eyes flickered. No, I was backstage, managing the props. That passage hasn't been used in years. It's too cramped, and the lock was rusted shut. Yet Poirot found the lock freshly oiled, a detail Elias couldn't explain. A red herring, or a path to the truth, Poirot wondered aloud. A bombshell followed. Japp, impatient for results, arrested Reginald Voss, citing the bloody cufflink and footprint as evidence. He's our man, Poirot, Japp declared. Jealous husband, caught red-handed. Poirot shook his head. No, Inspector. The evidence is too neat, like a script written to mislead. The true killer is more subtle. To test his theory, Poirot staged a reconstruction of the murder's 5-minute window. The cast reenacted their movements. Lydia in the green room, Victor in his office, Sir Geoffrey at his desk, Elias at the prop table, and Reginald in the audience. But a chorus girl, Clara, revealed a new detail. She'd seen Elias slip into the prop room during intermission, not the second act's end, contradicting his alibi. Confronted, Elias grew evasive. I was checking the daggers. Routine work, he insisted. But Poirot noticed a faint burn mark on his sleeve, suggestive of a chemical or flame. Curieux, Poirot murmured. A trace of the method, perhaps? Another twist. The torn letter fragment, you will pay for, was matched to a page in Isabella's journal found in her apartment. The full text read, you will pay for your betrayal, E.T., pointing to Elias Thorne. Had she discovered his embezzlement, or something more personal? A stagehand whispered of a brief affair between Isabella and Elias, ended when she threatened to expose his theft. Poirot's suspicions deepened, but a complication arose. The belladonna in the perfume bottle was traced to a cosmetic supplier, used in trace amounts for Isabella's complexion. Was it accidental, or a failed first attempt at murder? The stab wound, clean and fatal, suggested a killer who preferred certainty. As the day waned, Poirot gathered the suspects on the stage, the set of the Scarlet Orchid looming behind them. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice resonant. The truth is near, but it hides behind a curtain of lies. The footprint, the glove, the letter, the petal, they are pieces of a puzzle. But the locked room is the key. How was it done? A final clue emerged. A stagehand found a thin piece of twine in the prop room, its end singed, as if burned away. Poirot held it up, his eyes gleaming. A thread, he said, can lock a door from afar if one is clever. The suspects shifted uneasily, their faces a gallery of fear and defiance. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. The Orchid Theatre was a stage of illusions, and the killer had played their part masterfully. But the little grey cells were closing in, ready to tear down the curtain and reveal the truth. Chapter 6: Whispers from the Past. The Orchid Theatre, on the fourth day of Hercule Poirot's investigation in the autumn of 1925, seemed to hold its breath, as if the very walls anticipated the unraveling of its secrets. The murder of Isabella Voss, stabbed in her locked dressing room, had cast a pall over the West End, and the puzzle of the locked room remained as impenetrable as ever. Yet Poirot, with his immaculate grey suit and razor-sharp intellect, sensed the truth was near, lurking in the interplay of clues and motives. The orchid petal, the bloody footprint, the torn letter, the singed twine, each was a note in a symphony only his little grey cells could conduct. Poirot stood in the theatre's auditorium, the crimson seats empty, their silence a stark contrast to the clamour of the previous night's performance. Captain Arthur Hastings, his face a mix of awe and impatience, stood beside him, clutching his ever-present notebook. Inspector Japp, his frustration now tinged with grudging respect, approached. "Poirot," Japp said, rubbing his chin. "You've got us chasing shadows, petals, threads, and now this nonsense about a secret passage that leads nowhere. Reginald Voss is in custody, but you say he's not our man. What's your game?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, his moustache curving slightly. "The game, Inspector, is one of logic. The killer has played a clever role, but their performance falters. Today, we uncover the past, for it is in Mademoiselle Voss's history that the key to this locked room lies." Poirot began by delving into Isabella's background, a task that took him beyond the theatre's gilded walls to her apartment in Bloomsbury. With Hastings in tow, he examined her personal effects, guided by a warrant Japp had reluctantly secured. The apartment was a shrine to her stardom. Posters of the Scarlet Orchid, silk gowns draped over chairs, and a vanity cluttered with cosmetics. But among her papers, Poirot found a locked diary, its leather cover worn but elegant. A small key, hidden in a jewelry box, opened it, revealing entries that painted a complex portrait. Isabella, it seemed, had a scandalous past. A decade earlier, as a young actress, she had eloped with a married nobleman, sparking a scandal that nearly ended her career. The affair ended bitterly, and whispers of blackmail had followed her ever since. One entry, dated weeks before her death, read, "E.T. thinks he can hide his sins, but I know his secret. He'll pay, or I'll tell all." The initials pointed to Elias Thorne, the stage manager, confirming the torn letter fragment's accusation. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, closing the diary. A secret affair, perhaps, or something darker. Embezzlement, yes, but also betrayal. This is the motive's heart. Back at the theatre, Poirot pursued the clue of the orchid petal. The bouquet from Victor Long, now wilting in the dressing room, was missing one flower, its stem snapped cleanly. A closer inspection revealed a faint residue on the petal, a trace of belladonna, matching the poison in the perfume bottle. "Curieux," Poirot said, holding the petal to the light. The poison was not in the bottle alone. The flower itself was laced, a subtle weapon. But the stab was the killer's choice. Hastings frowned. "But why poison and a knife? It's overkill, Poirot." "Non, mon ami," Poirot replied. "The poison was a misdirection, perhaps accidental, from cosmetics Isabella used. The stab was theatrical, meant to dazzle us with its impossibility. The locked room's mystery deepened with a breakthrough. Poirot, revisiting the dressing room, focused on the bolt's mechanism. The heavy oak door, locked from within, had baffled all. But examining the keyhole, he noticed a faint scratch, barely visible, and a trace of ash. The twine, he said, recalling the singed piece found in the prop room. A simple trick, yet ingenious. A thread passed through the keyhole, pulled the bolt after the killer left, then burned away to hide the method. To test his theory, Poirot enlisted a stagehand to replicate the trick. Using a thin cord, they pulled the bolt from outside, then ignited the end with a match, leaving only ash. The door remained locked, the room sealed. Voila, Poirot said, his voice triumphant. The impossible becomes possible. But who wielded the thread? Poirot turned to the prop dagger, the blunt stage weapon Elias had demonstrated. A closer look revealed a hidden modification. The blade, though appearing dull, had been sharpened along one edge, capable of delivering a fatal wound. The handle bore a scratch, matching the keyhole's mark. The weapon was hidden in plain sight, Poirot said, concealed in the vanity after the crime. Elias Thorne, summoned for questioning, stood in the prop room, his grey eyes guarded. Monsieur Thorne, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. You knew the theatre's secrets, its passages, its props. You modified the dagger, did you not? And the twine, your burn mark, betrays you. Elias's hands trembled, but he denied it. I handled props, yes, but I didn't touch her. The dagger was blunt. I checked it myself. Yet a new witness, Clara the chorus girl, provided a damning detail. She'd seen Elias in the prop room during intermission, handling a small vial of liquid. Perhaps the belladonna used to lace the orchid. He was nervous, Clara whispered, muttering about Isabella ruining everything. Poirot's suspicions crystallized, but a twist complicated the picture. A second diary entry revealed Isabella had also confronted Victor Lang about a past indiscretion, a financial scam tied to the theatre's funding. VL thinks he's clever, she wrote, but I have proof of his fraud. Had Victor, too, faced her wrath? Confronting Victor in the rehearsal room, Poirot pressed him. Monsieur Lang, your orchids carried poison, and your past with Mademoiselle Voss was not merely romantic. She threatened to expose you, no? Victor's cigarette fell, his face ashen. She knew about some creative bookkeeping, yes. I begged her to stay quiet, but I didn't kill her. Poirot's mind raced. Two suspects with secrets, both linked to Isabella's threats. Yet the locked room pointed to a single killer, one with intimate knowledge of the theatre's mechanics. The hidden panel, freshly oiled, suggested Elias, but Victor's access as director couldn't be ignored. A final clue emerged. A stagehand found a charred matchstick in the storage room adjacent to the dressing room, near the hidden panel. The match that burned the twine, Poirot said, holding it up. The killer was careless, leaving traces of their artifice. As the day drew to a close, Poirot gathered the suspects on the stage, the set of the Scarlet Orchid looming like a silent witness. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice resonant. The crime is a performance, and we are nearing its climax. The locked room, the poison, the dagger, they are props in a deadly play, but one of you wrote the script. The suspects shifted uneasily. Reginald, his face drawn. Lydia, her eyes darting. Sir Geoffrey, sweating. Victor, chain-smoking. Elias, statue-like. Poirot held up the singed twine. This thread unlocked the mystery, but it also binds the killer. Who among you knew its use? A tense silence fell, broken only by the creak of the stage. Poirot's gaze lingered on Elias, whose fingers twitched, betraying a flicker of fear. The revelation was near, but the final piece, the motive's full depth, remained just out of reach. Isabella's diary hinted at a personal betrayal, not just financial. Had Elias's affair with her turned to hatred, or was another player hiding in the wings? Poirot dismissed the group, his mind a whirl of connections. The Orchid Theatre was a labyrinth of motives: jealousy, greed, love, revenge. But the locked room solution was clear. The killer had used the theatre's own tools against it, turning illusion into reality. As the fog thickened outside, Poirot knew the final act was approaching, and the little grey cells were ready to name the murderer. Chapter 7: Confrontation in the Spotlight. The Orchid Theatre, on the 5th day of Hercule Poirot's investigation in the autumn of 1925, stood as a silent witness to the unraveling of a deadly performance. The murder of Isabella Voss, stabbed in her locked dressing room, had baffled Scotland Yard, but Poirot's little grey cells had woven a tapestry of logic from the clues. A poisoned orchid petal, a bloody footprint, a torn letter, a singed twine, and a modified prop dagger. The locked room, once an impossible enigma, had yielded its secret, a thread trick that sealed the door after the crime. Now, as evening fell, Poirot prepared to unmask the killer in a dramatic denouement worthy of the theatre itself. The auditorium was transformed into a stage of judgment. The crimson seats, usually filled with applauding patrons, were empty, their silence amplifying the tension. The set of the Scarlet Orchid, with its painted garden backdrop, loomed behind a single table where Poirot stood, his grey suit immaculate, his moustache a perfect curve of confidence. Captain Arthur Hastings, his eyes wide with anticipation, stood by the wings, while Inspector Japp, his skepticism softened by hope, guarded the exits. The 5 suspects, Reginald Voss, Lydia Hart, Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, Victor Lang, and Elias Thorne, sat in a semicircle before Poirot, their faces a gallery of fear, defiance, and resignation. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice resonant yet measured, we gather tonight to close the curtain on a tragedy. Mademoiselle Isabella Voss, the star of this theatre, was struck down in her prime, in a room locked from within. The crime seemed impossible, yet Hercule Poirot declares, there is no such thing as an impossible crime, only a solution waiting to be seen. The suspects shifted uneasily, their glances darting like moths in the dim light. Poirot held up the singed twine, its frayed end a silent accusation. This thread, he said, was the key to the locked room. Passed through the keyhole, it pulled the bolt after the killer left, then was burned to hide the method. A simple trick, but one requiring intimate knowledge of the theatre's mechanics. He paced the stage, his eyes sweeping over the group. But let us begin with the clues, for they are the lines of this deadly script. The orchid petal, laced with belladonna, pointed to poison, yet the stab wound was the true cause of death. The footprint, matching Monsieur Voss's shoes, was too perfect, placed to mislead. The torn letter, you will pay for, hinted at blackmail, and the diary revealed Mademoiselle Voss's knowledge of secrets, financial and personal. The prop dagger, modified to kill, was hidden in plain sight, and the hidden panel, oiled for use, suggested a killer who knew the theatre's secrets. Reginald Voss, his face drawn, interrupted. Poirot, you've said yourself the footprint was a plant. I was in the audience. I didn't kill her. Poirot raised a hand. Patience, Monsieur Voss. Your jealousy was real, but your alibi holds barely. The doorman confirms your return to the audience, though your cufflink, smeared with blood, was another attempt to frame you. Lydia Hart, her blonde curls trembling, spoke next. And my glove? I told you it was stolen. Someone's trying to pin this on me. Oui, Mademoiselle Hart, Poirot said, his gaze softening. Your ambition was clear, but the glove was moved deliberately, a clumsy red herring. You are not the killer. Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, sweating profusely, blustered. This is absurd. I was in my office, drowning in debts. Yes, but I needed Isabella alive to save the theatre. Poirot nodded. Your forgeries with Monsieur Thorne were a motive, but your fear of ruin kept you from murder. No, you are not our culprit. Victor Long, his cigarette unlit for once, leaned forward. Then it's me, is it? Because of the orchids? I told you, I gave her the bouquet as a peace offering. The orchids, Poirot said, were poisoned, but not by you. The belladonna was a trace from Mademoiselle Voss's cosmetics, an accident magnified to confuse. Your affair with her ended, but your passion was for your art, not revenge. All eyes turned to Elias Thorne, the stage manager, whose quiet demeanor now seemed a mask stretched thin. His grey eyes met Poirot's, unflinching but strained. Monsieur Thorne, Poirot said, his voice sharp as a blade, you are the architect of this crime. It is you who murdered Isabella Voss. A gasp rippled through the group. Elias's hands clenched, but he remained silent. Poirot continued, his tone relentless. Your motive was twofold, financial and personal. Mademoiselle Voss discovered your embezzlement. Small sums from the petty cash, forged in the ledgers, with Sir Geoffrey's unwitting initials. She threatened to expose you, ruining your life. But there was more. Your affair with her, brief and secret, ended when she scorned you, calling you a thief and a fool. Her diary confirms it. E.T. will pay for his betrayal. Elias's voice was low, almost a whisper. You have no proof, Poirot. Au contraire, Poirot said, holding up the modified prop dagger. This blade, sharpened by your hand, was the murder weapon, hidden in the vanity after the deed. The scratch on its handle matches the keyhole where you passed the twine. The burn mark on your sleeve, from igniting the thread, betrays you, and the oiled panel, known only to theatre staff, allowed you to enter and exit unseen during those 5 minutes after the second act. Poirot paced, reconstructing the crime. You entered via the hidden panel, stabbed Mademoiselle Voss with the modified dagger, and exited. Using the twine, you pulled the bolt from outside, then burned the evidence with a match, leaving only ash and a singed fragment. The footprint, stolen from Monsieur Voss's shoes in the prop room, was your attempt to shift blame. The orchid petal, laced with trace belladonna from her cosmetics, was a fortunate accident, amplifying the mystery. Elias's composure cracked, his voice rising. Why would I risk it all? She was just an actress. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because, Monsieur Thorne, you are a man of pride, hidden beneath your quiet facade. Isabella's threats to expose your theft, your affair, your shame, were intolerable. You used the theatre's own illusions against her, crafting a locked room to baffle us. But you forgot one thing. The little grey cells of Hercule Poirot see through all deceptions. Elias slumped, his face crumpling. She was going to ruin me. I begged her to stop, but she laughed, said I was nothing. I couldn't let her destroy me. Japp stepped forward, handcuffs ready. That's enough, Thorne. You're under arrest. As Elias was led away, the theatre seemed to exhale. its tension dissipating like fog under sunlight. Reginald, cleared of suspicion, sat silently, his grief raw but untainted by guilt. Lydia, her ambition now tempered by relief, wiped away tears. Sir Geoffrey muttered about insurance saving the theatre, while Victor lit another cigarette, his hands shaking. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice soft. Mon ami, the human heart is the true locked room, is it not? Full of secrets, locked by pride and fear? Hastings nodded, awestruck. You did it again, Poirot? That twine trick, devilishly clever. Jap, grudgingly impressed, clapped Poirot's shoulder. You've saved my neck, Poirot. The press will eat this up. Belgian detective cracks impossible murder. Poirot waved a hand, dismissive. The credit belongs to Logic, Inspector, and to Mademoiselle Voss, who, even in death, left clues to her killer. As the suspects dispersed, the stage lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the set. Poirot lingered, his gaze on the painted garden, where the illusion of the scarlet orchid had masked a real tragedy. The case was closed, but questions lingered about love, betrayal, and the fragility of human pride. Outside, the fog had lifted, revealing a London awakening to a new day. Poirot adjusted his hat, his mind already turning to the next challenge. Come, Hastings, he said, stepping toward the exit. The world is full of puzzles, and the little grey cells are never idle. The Orchid Theatre, cleansed of its darkness, would reopen, its stage ready for new dramas. But for now, the spotlight belonged to Hercule Poirot, who had turned an impossible crime into a triumph of reason. Chapter 8: Aftermath and Reflections. The Orchid Theatre, in the fading light of an autumn evening in 1925, stood as a monument to both triumph and tragedy. The murder of Isabella Voss, once an impossible puzzle locked within the confines of her dressing room, had been solved by Hercule Poirot's relentless logic. Elias Thorne, the unassuming stage manager, had confessed to the crime, his motives of embezzlement and spurned affection laid bare under Poirot's piercing gaze. The theatre, cleansed of its darkest secret, seemed to breathe again, yet the scars of betrayal lingered in the air like the faint perfume of spilled roses. Poirot stood in the foyer, his grey suit as pristine as ever, his moustache a perfect curve of satisfaction. The crystal chandeliers above cast soft prisms across the marble floor, but their glow felt subdued, as if mourning the loss of the theatre's brightest star. Captain Arthur Hastings, his notebook now tucked away, stood beside him, his boyish face a mix of relief and melancholy. Inspector Japp, his usual gruffness softened by gratitude, joined them, his hat in hand. Poirot, Japp said, a rare smile breaking through. You've done it again. The yard's in your debt, and the papers will have a field day. Belgian sleuth cracks locked room mystery. I can see the headlines now. Poirot waved a hand, his expression modest, yet tinged with pride. The headlines, Inspector, are but noise. The truth is what matters, and Mademoiselle Voss, in her death, pointed us to it. Her diary, her clues. They were the script of her justice. The aftermath of Elias Thorne's arrest was swift and decisive. Scotland Yard had escorted him away in handcuffs, his quiet demeanor crumbling into a mix of defiance and despair. His confession, wrung out under Poirot's relentless questioning, had revealed the depth of his desperation. Isabella's discovery of his petty theft from the theatre's funds, coupled with the humiliation of their ended affair, had driven him to a meticulously planned murder. The modified prop dagger, the twine trick through the keyhole, the planted footprint, all were his tools, wielded with the precision of a stage manager accustomed to orchestrating illusions. Yet the theatre's future hung in the balance. Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the beleaguered owner, sat in his office, his florid face less strained now that the truth was out. Poirot visited him, finding the man poring over a ledger, a glass of brandy untouched at his side. Monsieur Beaumont, Poirot said, his tone gentle but firm. The theatre survives, but at what cost? Your complicity in Monsieur Thorne's forgeries, though unwitting, nearly cost you everything. Sir Geoffrey nodded, his eyes weary. I was a fool, Poirot. Elias handled the books, and I trusted him. Isabella's demands were crushing us, but I never wished her harm. Her death. It's a tragedy, but the insurance will cover the losses. We'll reopen, perhaps with Lydia Hart as our new star. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And your debts to Monsieur Voss? They remain, no? Sir Geoffrey sighed. Reginald's agreed to extend the loans, now that the scandal's resolved. He's grieving, but he's a businessman at heart. Reginald Voss, cleared of suspicion, had retreated to his Mayfair home. His grief a private storm. Poirot and Hastings paid him a brief visit, finding him in a darkened study, a photograph of Isabella on his desk. Monsieur Voss, Poirot said, your wife's memory is honored by the truth. The footprint, the cufflink, they were lies to ensnare you. But your alibi held. Reginald's voice was hoarse. I loved her, Poirot. Despite everything. Her admirers, her ambition, it drove us apart. But I'd never have hurt her. Elias. I trusted him, like a brother. Poirot inclined his head. The heart, monsieur, is a fragile stage. But you are free to mourn and to rebuild. Lydia Hart, the ambitious understudy, was found backstage, rehearsing lines for the Scarlet Orchid. Her blonde curls caught the stage lights, and her eyes, once shadowed by envy, now held a cautious hope. Mademoiselle Hart, Poirot said, approaching, your moment approaches. But tell me, did you ever suspect Monsieur Thorne? Lydia paused, her script trembling in her hands. I knew he was secretive, always hovering near the props. When my glove went missing, I thought it was just carelessness. But murder? I never imagined. She hesitated, then added, I'll honor Isabella's legacy, Monsieur Poirot. I owe her that. Poirot nodded, sensing her sincerity. The stage is yours, mademoiselle. Use it wisely. Victor Long, the volatile director, was in the rehearsal room, surrounded by crumpled pages of his next script. His dark eyes, once burning with passion, were dulled by the weight of the tragedy. Monsieur Long, Poirot said, your orchids were a gesture of peace, yet they carried a shadow of poison. An accident, oui, but one that confused us. Victor lit a cigarette, his hands steadier now. I loved her, in my way. Not enough to kill, but enough to mourn. The poison, it must have been her cosmetics. I'd never have harmed her. Poirot's gaze softened. Your art will endure, monsieur. Let it be your redemption. As the day unfolded, Poirot reflected on the clues that had led to Elias's downfall. The orchid petal, laced with belladonna from Isabella's own cosmetics, had been a fortunate accident, amplifying the mystery. The footprint, stolen from Reginald's shoes in the prop room, was a deliberate misdirection. The torn letter, planted by Elias, had pointed to Sir Geoffrey's debts, another red herring. The twine and the modified dagger, however, were the killer's true tools, betraying his intimate knowledge of the theatre's mechanics. Poirot returned to the dressing room, now cleared of its grim evidence, to ensure no detail was overlooked. The hidden panel, freshly oiled, had been a temptation, a false path that led only to a locked storage room. The killer wished us to chase phantoms, Poirot murmured to Hastings, But the twine was his mistake. A simple thread, burned away, yet its ash spoke volumes. Hastings, ever the eager pupil, shook his head in wonder. You saw it all, Poirot. The diary, the twine, the dagger. How do you do it? Poirot smiled, adjusting his hat. The little grey cells, mon ami. They observe what others ignore. The human heart leaves traces, and those traces tell a story. Jap, joining them, offered a rare compliment. You've saved the Yard's reputation, Poirot. The Commissioner's pleased, though he'll never admit it. What's next for you? Poirot's eyes twinkled. A cup of tisane, perhaps, and the quiet of Whitehaven mansions. But the world, Inspector, is never short of mysteries. As evening fell, the theatre prepared to reopen. Sir Geoffrey announced a memorial performance for Isabella, with Lydia in the lead role. The scandal, while damaging, had drawn public fascination, ensuring sold-out shows. The creditors, reassured by insurance payouts, granted a reprieve. Reginald, though heartbroken, pledged to support the theatre in Isabella's memory, a gesture that softened his stern demeanour. Poirot and Hastings stepped into the foggy streets of Shaftesbury Avenue, the theatre's marquee flickering back to life behind them. It's a strange thing, Poirot, Hastings said, pulling his coat tighter, how a place of illusion can hide such real pain. Oui, mon ami, Poirot replied, his voice soft. The stage mirrors life, love, betrayal, ambition, all played out under lights, but justice, like a good script, restores order. They walked on, the fog swallowing their figures, leaving the Orchid Theatre to its new chapter. Isabella's ghost, if it lingered, was at peace, her killer unmasked by the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 9. Loose Ends Tied the Orchid. Theatre, in the soft twilight of late October 1925, stood as a beacon of resilience on Shaftesbury Avenue. The murder of Isabella Voss, once a seemingly impossible crime locked within her dressing room, had been solved by Hercule Poirot's unerring logic. Elias Thorne, the stage manager, was behind bars, his confession of embezzlement and spurned love laying bare the motives behind his meticulously staged murder. The theatre, though scarred by tragedy, was poised to reopen, its marquee lights ready to shine once more. Yet, as Poirot knew, no mystery was complete until every thread was neatly tied, every shadow dispelled by the light of truth. Poirot stood in the theatre's foyer, his grey suit as immaculate as his reasoning, his moustache a precise arc of satisfaction. The crystal chandeliers above cast gentle prisms across the marble floor, their glow a quiet promise of renewal. Captain Arthur Hastings, his faithful companion, lingered nearby, his face alight with the afterglow of a case well solved. Inspector Japp, his usual gruffness softened by relief, joined them, his notebook tucked away. Poirot, Japp said, clapping his hands, you've outdone yourself. The Yard's singing your praises, and the press is calling it the locked room triumph. But are we truly done here? Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice measured. Almost, Inspector. A crime is like a play. Its resolution must satisfy, but the epilogue must clarify. There are loose ends, small but significant, that we must address to honor Mademoiselle Voss's memory. The first thread was the orchid petal, that pale pink clue found beside Isabella's body. Poirot revisited the dressing room, now cleared of its grim evidence, to confirm its significance. The bouquet from Victor Lang, wilted but preserved for evidence, was missing one flower. Its stem snapped. Chemical analysis, arranged by Japp, confirmed the petal's belladonna trace was indeed from Isabella's own cosmetics. a high-end cream she used for her complexion, laced with minute amounts of the toxin for its reputed glow. The poison, Poirot explained to Hastings, was no murder attempt, but a tragic accident. Mademoiselle Voss's vanity, not a killer's hand, placed the belladonna in her room. Elias exploited this, letting us chase a false trail. Hastings nodded, scribbling in his notebook. So the petal was a red herring, like the footprint? Oui, mon ami, Poirot said. But a herring that pointed us to the truth. The missing flower was taken by Elias, perhaps to mask the scent of his presence. But he left the petal behind, a careless slip. The second loose end was the bloody footprint, matching Reginald Voss's shoes. Poirot visited the prop room, where Elias had access to costumes and accessories. Among the clutter, he found a pair of Reginald's spare shoes, kept for a promotional event. The soles bore traces of stage paint, but no blood, proof the footprint was planted. Elias, Poirot said, stole the shoes, smeared them with blood from the crime, and placed the print to implicate Monsieur Voss. A clumsy deception, for the blood was too fresh, too deliberate. Reginald, now cleared, was found at his Mayfair home, sorting through Isabella's belongings. Poirot met him there, offering a final clarification. Monsieur Voss, he said, your cufflink, found with a blood smear, was another of Elias's tricks, taken from the prop room, where you'd left it during a visit. Your innocence is certain. Reginald's eyes, heavy with grief, softened. Thank you, Poirot. I was a fool to doubt her, but I'll honor her by supporting the theatre. She'd have wanted it to thrive. The torn letter fragment, you will pay for, was the next thread. Poirot returned to Isabella's diary, found in her Bloomsbury apartment, to match the handwriting. The full entry, you will pay for your betrayal, E.T., confirmed Elias as the target of her wrath, not only for his theft, but for his betrayal of their brief affair. A second letter, uncovered among her papers, hinted at another secret, a financial scam involving Victor Lang, though not pursued by Elias. This letter, Poirot told Japp, was planted by Elias to point us toward Sir Geoffrey's debts, another distraction. But Isabella's true threat was to Elias alone. Victor Lang, the director, was found in the rehearsal room, rewriting the Scarlet Orchid to honor Isabella. Poirot approached, holding the wilted bouquet. Monsieur Lang, your orchids were innocent, but your past with Mademoiselle Voss was not. She knew of your financial indiscretions, oui? Victor sighed, his cigarette unlit. She did. I fudged some investor funds to keep the play alive. She threatened to tell, but we'd settled it. Elias, he used that to throw suspicion on me. Poirot nodded. Your art survives, monsieur. Let it be a tribute to her. Lydia Hart, the understudy, was preparing for her debut as the new star. In the green room, her blonde curls caught the light, her ambition now tempered by humility. Mademoiselle Hart, Poirot said, your glove was another of Elias's deceptions, stolen to cast doubt on you. Your alibi, though shaky, holds true. The chorus girls confirm your presence, if belatedly. Lydia's eyes glistened. I envied Isabella, but I never wished her harm. I'll carry her legacy forward, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, in his office, was finalizing plans for the theatre's reopening. Poirot visited, noting the ledger's corrected entries. Monsieur Beaumont, he said, your forgeries with Elias were a mistake, but not a motive for murder. Your theatre is safe now, thanks to insurance and Monsieur Voss's generosity. Sir Geoffrey's relief was palpable. We'll stage a memorial for Isabella, with Lydia in the lead. The orchid will bloom again. The final loose end was the hidden panel in the dressing room wall. Poirot, with a stagehand's help, examined it once more. The passage led to a storage room locked during the performance, but its oiled hinges betrayed Elias's use. He entered here, Poirot explained to Hastings, stabbed Mademoiselle Voss, and exited, using the twine to lock the door from outside. The matchstick and ash, found later, confirmed his method. Japp, listening, shook his head in admiration. You saw it all, Poirot. The twine, the dagger, the petal. How do you do it? Poirot smiled, adjusting his hat. The little grey cells, Inspector. They see what is hidden in plain sight. Every clue is a whisper, and together they sing the truth. As the theatre prepared for its memorial performance, Poirot took a final walk across the stage. The set of the Scarlet Orchid, with its painted garden, seemed to hold Isabella's spirit, a reminder of her brilliance and fragility. The suspects, now cleared, were rebuilding their lives. Reginald, finding solace in philanthropy. Lydia, stepping into the spotlight. Victor, pouring his guilt into his art. Sir Geoffrey, steering the theatre towards solvency. Poirot paused by the prop table, where the modified dagger had been found. The theatre, he mused to Hastings, is a mirror of life, full of illusions, yet grounded in truth. Mademoiselle Voss played her part, and we have played ours. Hastings, ever loyal, grinned. You're a marvel, Poirot. What's next? A quiet evening, mon ami, Poirot replied, with a tisane and the symmetry of a case well closed. As they stepped into the foggy streets, the Orchid Theatre's marquee flickered to life, announcing the memorial show. London moved on, its pulse unbroken, and Poirot, with a satisfied nod, vanished into the mist, ready for the next mystery to challenge his little grey cells. Chapter 10, Curtain Call. The Orchid Theatre, in the crisp twilight of late October 1925, stood poised on the cusp of renewal. The murder of Isabella Voss, once an impossible enigma locked within her dressing room, had been solved by Hercule Poirot's unyielding logic. Elias Thorne, the stage manager whose quiet demeanor hid a heart of betrayal, was now in custody, his confession of embezzlement and spurned love unraveling the mystery. The theatre, though touched by tragedy, was ready to reclaim its place as a jewel of London's West End. As the fog swirled gently outside, Poirot prepared to take his final bow, ensuring every detail of the case was polished to perfection. Poirot stood on the stage, the crimson curtains framing him like a portrait of precision. His grey suit gleamed under the footlights, his moustache a testament to his meticulous nature. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal companion, stood in the wings, his face alight with admiration for the detective's triumph. Inspector Japp, his gruff exterior now softened by gratitude, lingered nearby, his hat clutched in hand. Poirot, Japp said, a rare warmth in his voice. You've turned this theatre from a crime scene to a triumph. The commissioner's pleased, and the press is calling you the master of the locked room. What's left to do? Poirot's eyes twinkled, his voice soft, yet resonant. Mon ami, a mystery is not complete until its final notes are played. The stage is clear, but the audience, theatre, city, and Mademoiselle Voss herself deserves a proper curtain call. Let us ensure the story ends with harmony. The theatre was abuzz with preparations for its reopening. A memorial performance of The Scarlet Orchid, scheduled for the following evening. Sir Geoffrey Beaumont, the owner, had transformed his nervous energy into action, his office now a hive of activity as he coordinated with creditors and publicists. Poirot visited him, finding the man surrounded by posters proclaiming, "In memory of Isabella Voss." "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, "the theatre rises from its ashes like the phoenix. But tell me, have you learned from this tragedy?" Sir Geoffrey, his florid face less strained, nodded. "I was blind, Poirot. Trusted Elias too much, ignored the ledgers. But the insurance has cleared our debts, and Reginald Voss has extended his loans. We'll honor Isabella with this show, with Lydia Hart as our new star." Poirot inclined his head. "A wise choice, monsieur. The theatre thrives when it respects its past while embracing its future." Lydia Hart, the understudy turned leading lady, was rehearsing on stage, her blonde curls catching the spotlight as she delivered Isabella's lines with a newfound grace. Poirot watched from the auditorium, noting the transformation in her demeanor, ambition tempered by humility. "Mademoiselle Hart," he called, approaching the stage. "You step into a legend's shoes. Do you feel the weight?" Lydia paused, her script in hand, her blue eyes steady. "I do, Monsieur Poirot. Isabella was unmatched, but I'll give everything to honor her. The cast, the crew. We're a family now, united by her loss." She hesitated, then added, "I found something. A note from Isabella, tucked in her script. It said, 'Lydia, shine when your time comes.' She believed in me." Poirot's moustache twitched with approval. "A generous spirit, even in death. You will do her proud." Reginald Voss, now a widower grappling with grief, was found at his Mayfair home, sorting through Isabella's personal effects. Poirot and Hastings paid a final visit, finding him in a study lined with photographs of his late wife. "Monsieur Voss," Poirot said, his tone gentle, "the truth has freed you, but it cannot erase the pain. Have you found peace?" Reginald's voice was low, his eyes fixed on a portrait of Isabella in her scarlet orchid costume. "Peace? Not yet, Poirot. I was jealous, foolish, but I loved her. Elias's betrayal, it's a bitter pill. But I've pledged funds to the theatre for her sake. It's what she'd have wanted." Poirot nodded. "Your generosity ensures her legacy. The footprint, the cufflink, they were lies, but your love was true." Victor Lang, the director, was in the rehearsal room, his dark eyes focused on a revised script for the memorial performance. The weight of Isabella's death had softened his volatility, his passion now channeled into art. "Monsieur Lang," Poirot said, "your orchids were a gesture of peace, marred by an accidental poison. Have you reconciled with Mademoiselle Voss's memory?" Victor set down his pen, his hand steady. "I have, Poirot. She was my muse, even when we fought. The belladonna, it was her cosmetic cream, not my doing. I'm rewriting, the play's ending, giving her character a triumph. It's my apology." Poirot's gaze softened. "Art hails, monsieur. Let it be your redemption." The final clues were revisited to ensure no shadow remained. The orchid petal, laced with belladonna, was confirmed as a byproduct of Isabella's vanity. A cosmetic misstep, not a murder weapon. The bloody footprint, planted by Elias using Reginald's shoes, was a deliberate deception. Its fresh blood betraying its staging. The torn letter, "You will pay for," matched Isabella's diary. Its accusation against Elias rooted in his theft and affair. The singed twine used to lock the door was the killer's masterstroke, its ash a silent confession. Poirot returned to the dressing room, now restored for Lydia's use, to confirm the mechanics of the crime. The hidden panel, oiled by Elias, had allowed his entry, while the twine trick sealed the illusion of an impossible murder. The theatre, Poirot mused to Hastings, is a place of mirrors and shadows. Elias used its tools to deceive, but the little grey cells saw through the illusion. Hastings, ever the eager student, grinned. "You're a marvel, Poirot. That twine trick, it's like something from a play." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied. "But life is the greater drama, and truth its finest act." The memorial performance drew near, and London buzzed with anticipation. The scandal had only heightened the theatre's allure, with tickets sold out for weeks. Sir Geoffrey, bolstered by Reginald's support, hired new staff to replace Elias, ensuring the theatre's operations ran smoothly. The cast, once fractured by suspicion, rallied around Lydia, their rehearsals infused with a sense of purpose. On the eve of the performance, Poirot attended a final rehearsal, sitting in the auditorium's front row. Lydia's performance was luminous, her voice carrying Isabella's passion, but with her own quiet strength. The cast moved seamlessly, the stagehands precise, as if the theatre itself were healing. Sir Geoffrey, watching from the wings, whispered to Poirot, "She's our new star, but Isabella's spirit is here." Poirot nodded. "The stage endures, monsieur, as does truth." As the rehearsal ended, Poirot took a final walk through the theatre, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The dressing room, once a scene of horror, was now a place of creation, its mirror reflecting Lydia's determined face. The prop room, where Elias had hidden his deadly dagger, was organized anew, its secrets laid bare. The foyer, with its chandeliers and marble, glowed with the promise of a new chapter. Outside, the fog had cleared, revealing a London alight with possibility. Poirot and Hastings stepped onto Shaftesbury Avenue, the marquee blazing with "In Memory of Isabella Voss." "It's over, Poirot," Hastings said, pulling his coat tight. "A splendid case, but a sad one." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, adjusting his hat. "The heart breaks, but the mind restores order. Mademoiselle Voss shines still, in the light of justice." They walked into the night, the theatre's glow fading behind them. The Orchid Theatre would rise again, its stage a canvas for new stories, new stars. And Hercule Poirot, with his little grey cells ever vigilant, was ready for the next mystery to call him from the shadows.